Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, Wisconsin, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. I've got a collection on my site now, on my channel, I should say, on my YouTube channel of over 75 or 80 videos. So there's lots of subjects for you to check out. So if you ran across this video somewhere and you want to explore the rest of my video collection, I think you'll find some things to be quite helpful there. Anyway, I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. We're located right on Main Street in Hayward. And today we're going to continue with the series I've been doing. It's a What Lakefront Property Can I Afford 2025 series. I did this about a year and a half ago, which is kind of old information now. So I'm redoing this series because I think it's one that's important to both buyers and sellers to get a feel for what can they afford if they're on the buyer side, and hopefully have kind of realistic expectations that match up with current market prices. And for sellers, you maybe would want to watch this and see where your home may fall in the continuum, before you have myself or another agent come out and take a look at your property. Obviously, I'm hoping you'll contact me to list your property for you, but obviously we do a free comparative market analysis and come and see your home. But this still might give you an idea. Maybe you're thinking of selling in a year or two and you're just kind of trying to get a feel for what the market is currently. So this is going to focus on data just from the Hayward and Stone Lake areas. The Hayward area is the hub and the center of the vacation community. It does have most of the bigger tier 1 lakes in that area, and it also is the highest price. So you can keep in mind, you can get a little more for your money if you're willing to drive further east, or if you're good with like the Spooner, Trigo, Minong area. 𝐃𝐨𝐵 is pretty similar to Hayward, even though it's slightly further in distance. There's some very nice lakes up there, and that area is not much different in price. And then like Birchwood would be slightly less than Hayward. So keep that in mind when you're watching this series. If you're open to some of those other locations, you will be able to get a little more for your money. And I do cover all of those areas, but Stone Lake and Hayward are my primary focus in my real estate career. And I am a lakefront and listing expert, so I would be happy to help you whether you're in that area or otherwise. But this series is going to focus on just 2025 sales on water in the Hayward and Stone Lake zip code. So come along, join me, and we'll dig into it. So if you've been following along with this series, you'll know that we started with a 0 to 300,000 range, then 3 to 500, 5 to 750, 750 to $1 million, and now this video will focus on the $1 million to $1.5 million price range. So as we get up higher in price, you'll notice there's a lot less places that have sold. So good news as a buyer, I guess, in the Hayward area, majority of homes on water are under $1 million in terms of the percentage. But there are quite a few that sell in the $1 million to $4 million is the highest, less than $4 million is the highest sale we've had this year. Over $2 million is pretty rare at this stage in our market. There's like a handful a year. So the $1 million to $1.5 million range, you start to have a smaller buyer pool, start to have less properties that do generate that kind of a sale price. But that said, there still were 7 that sold in that $1 million to $1.5 million. And then when we do our final video of $1.5 million and above, you'll see that there was also a similar amount in that range. So maybe of the total properties, you're looking at the top 10% or so of the properties that sell, maybe 10 to 15% that are in the $1 million and above. But there are quite a few. When you get on the tier 1 lakes, or you get into something that has a lot more frontage or privacy or really large homes, that's when you'll see these prices at the $1 million to $1.5 million and above. So again, I'm going to give you a little bit of stats on these 7 properties that did sell in this price range. The average price was right in the middle of the total, between $1 million and $1.5 million. The average sale price for these 7 properties was $1,250,300. The average square footage of these homes, obviously you're getting into some larger square footages when you get into this price point. So the average square footage was 3,235, and the average price per square foot was $417, and that obviously includes the land, the lakefront, all of that in that square footage price. That's not just the cost of the structure itself. The days on market for these properties were 95 days, so still relatively short time frame in which these sold on average. And you do see a little more negotiating power on the buyer's part when we get into the higher price points. They sold for 95.3% of the list price at the time that it went under contract. So what I was seeing this year, not always across the board, it just depends, but in terms of negotiation on some of these that I was involved in, my buyer or my seller were negotiating maybe 5%, give or take, which is kind of lines up with what this data shows. So then we'll get into some details of these. I picked out 4 of them out of the 7 that I either showed or was involved with the transaction, so I have a little more inside information on these, just to give you a feel for what can you get in this area if your budget is in that $1 million to $1.5 1.5 million in the Hayward and Stone Lake areas. So this first one that I'm going to talk about was in the Victory Heights Circle area on Lac Courte Oreilles. I've mentioned before the Victory Heights. I actually did a video with a tour of Victory Heights, but it's kind of a peninsula area on Lac Courte Oreilles, so there's houses just all around the outside of that peninsula. Some on the interior as well, but all the lake homes obviously are around the edge. So this was kind of on the Muskie Bay side, but it was down towards the end of Muskie Bay where it gets into nicer frontage, not as marshy frontage there. So it's the only place on Lac Courte Oreilles really that has some marshy frontage is in the far end of Muskie Bay. Anyway, this was 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,326 square foot home, but it had a pretty important feature that you don't see just looking at this on paper, which was that there was a garage. I think it was a 3-car garage that had living quarters above it, and they actually had it connected to the house with like a little walkway, so you could walk out of the upper level of the house and walk over to the entrance to the space above the garage. So that probably added another maybe 500 square feet to this property. It was something that would be great for either a family, vacation home. It could be a full-time home, but the folks who purchased it actually were largely using it as a rental, which would be a great rental as well. And then in the future, they'll use it more themselves when they get closer to retirement age. I showed this home, but I didn't end up being the one that sold it, but someone on my team ended up bringing the buyer and closing on this transaction. So kind of knew a little more about it. The home was built in 2010 and it had 119 feet of waterfront, and you can see the photos here. It did end up selling for $1,415,000 after having been reduced to $1,499,000. So 1.4 million for this one, but it was a beautiful setting, beautiful entrance to the property. The home was very, very well maintained, updated. So just a beautiful, beautiful place. So that's on a tier 1 lake. Lac Courte Oreilles is, in my opinion, a tier 1 lake. This next one would be on a tier 2 lake. And interestingly enough, of the 7 properties, a number of them were on tier 2 lakes, but as you'll see, new construction. So it's always a convergence of these different factors and what you can get for the money on which lake, and all the features and all of that. So this next one was new construction on Sand Lake. The only reason I call Sand Lake a tier 2 lake is because it's a little bit smaller. It's 900 acres, beautiful water, beautiful sandy bottom on that lake, hence the name Sand Lake. It's great fishing from what I hear. It's a great location, but it is a little bit smaller, but it has a lot of low elevation on that lake, which is super nice. You can walk right out to the water. So that's a big plus. So this was listed for 1.25 million. It ended up selling for 1.2. It was on the market for 92 days, pretty quick from the time it came on the market until it closed. It was a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath on a little over half an acre with a 2-car attached garage. There was a bonus room above the garage as well, kind of a rec room area. Like I said, brand new construction, 2,314 square feet. Very good curb appeal, great views of the lake, low elevation to the water, and like I said, that was on Sand Lake and sold for 1.2. And then the third one here is on Long Lake, down on Long Lake Road. Long Lake is also what I would consider a tier 1 lake. This one had a Stone Lake address because the north end of Long Lake is in the Stone Lake zip code. When you get to the south end, it's Birchwood or Serona. So I do work down on Long Lake. It's just sort of on the further end of Long Lake is kind of on the edge of my range, but I cover all of Long Lake. But this one was on the north end, so it had a Stone Lake address. This was listed for 1.1 and ended up selling for 1.15. So it sold went under contract in just a few days. In fact, the entire time from when it came on the market till it closed was 49 days. So very quick sale. I had some buyers who looked at this. They ended up feeling like it was a little too far down to the water for their liking, so they passed on it. But it was like a medium elevation, but it was beautifully landscaped outside and had like some sitting areas as you went down towards the water. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms on almost 3/4 of an acre, 2,900 square feet, a 2-car garage, and it was built in 2001. And again, that ended up selling for $1,150,000 over full asking price. And then this last one I wanted to tell you about is also new construction, also on Sand Lake. On this one, I happened to be on the list side and on the buy side of this transaction. It was listed for 1,249, so basically 1.25 million. Ended up closing at 1,125,000. Probably a little bit aggressive on the price to begin with, but in the end, it was a quick close and both the buyer and seller were happy with what they ended up with. So this was a larger home, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. It did have a 2-car detached garage, very nice size garage. Ended up being insulated on the inside as well. It was on a 2.41 acre lot, so a large lot, except that the frontage was still kind of normal, like 120 or 130 feet of frontage, so it was long and narrow. Not all of the land was necessarily usable, but it still did give some extra land if somebody wanted to add like another outbuilding or something later. This was built in 2025 as well. Like I said, brand new construction, only 43 days on the market from the time it came on the market until it closed. So again, very quick sale at 1.125 million. Beautiful sandy level frontage, great views across Sand Lake. So again, Sand Lake is a tier 2 lake, so that gives you an idea of like what you might be able to get on a tier 2 lake. It's unusual to find properties that are in that, say, 1.25 million and above that are not on either tier 1, 2, or 3 lakes. As you get into the smaller lakes, it's a very unusual property. If it is higher than, say, 1.25, it's usually because there's like a large amount of acreage or a large amount of privacy or an extremely large house. That would be the only times you'd really see that. So it's always on a continuum of location, lake size, and square footage of the home. Those are, and then the frontage itself. Those are kind of the main factors that impact price in our area. And again, this is what I do every day. I've sold homes in all of these price categories in 2025. So I'm very familiar with all of the different levels of pricing and what you can get for what prices in what area on what size lake. So contact me anytime. I hope you're enjoying this series, and I'd be happy to help you with buying or selling. Again, Audrey Miller with Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. I'd love if you would comment, share, subscribe, click the notifications button so that you get updated when I have a new video. And I hope you are having a great day.